Hello and welcome to Help for Toxic Relationships. I'm Dr. Rhoberta Shaler, the Relationship Help Doctor, and I'm so glad you're here. I hope you've been here before, and if you haven't, an especially big welcome because we are going to be talking about so many important things tonight. Things that can help you improve your relationship and get to a place where you feel confident, where you feel you can really speak up and tell your truth. And that's so important. So very, very important. So I'm going to open the live chat here. And I'd love it if you would pop in and say hello so that I know you're here. And if you have any questions and all, I think you know from the drill. If you've been here before, you've been to other things that on YouTube live streaming, that you can put your questions or your comments right in the live chat. So I highly recommend that you do that, not only because it's a good idea to share and ask your questions, but because I'd like to know you're here. And it's an important one tonight. We're going to be talking about learning to say no. And sometimes we may think that saying no is an impossibility in some very difficult relationships because it hasn't worked well in the past. But if you have some good strategies and some new insights, it can work quite well for you. You just have to do it a little differently than you did before. Hi, Kristen. Glad to see you here. And thanks for checking in. Please do just say hello in the chat if you are joining us now so that I know you're here and that we can proceed and have a great conversation tonight. You know, I was over in the membership site at optimizecircles.com today and interacting with members over there. And there are so many topics that come up over time. And we talk with one another. I give my advice. And there are many, many opportunities there for you to ask questions. Or you can up-level and come to a monthly webinar and have access to webinars. Or you can up-level again, have all that, the talk, the webinars, and 2 Ask Me Anything group calls a month. Hi, Anna. Thanks for checking in. Glad to see you here. And I was just mentioning the membership site, optimizecircles.com. So if you want to be safely off social media and interact with me and other people who are going through the similar things, come on over and be a member at optimizecircles.com. Hi, Obama Girl. Nice to see you back again. I love it when I see familiar faces, and I'm very excited when I see new ones, and I'm saying see, of course, I don't see you, but I see you in the listing, and that's exciting to me. Hello, Laura. Oh, thank you. She says, I think you're fantastic, so informative. That's very nice to hear. I'm glad that you found me, and you find that to be true. I'm so glad that we can all, how many times have I said I'm so glad, but I really am. I really enjoy our Monday live streams and the opportunity to move strategies forward and ideas forward and lives forward and relationships forward and self-esteem and self-confidence forward, because when we do that, we reduce anxiety and we reduce our internal anger. And that's so, so, so very important for us to do. So tonight's topic on learning to say no is an important one. How awful do you feel when someone asks you to do something that you know you don't want to do? You know immediately you don't want to do it, but you don't say no. And then you're upset with yourself, you're upset with them, you're using up valuable time and resources within yourself with a little resentment, and you're dragging your feet and you wish you'd done it differently, and why couldn't I, all of those kinds of things, because you didn't know how to say no, or you weren't certain that you could pull it off without causing a problem. So anybody know why you are reluctant to say no at any time? Anybody have an insight into that? Just put it in the chat if you already know. I think one of the reasons that most people don't like to say no to other humans is because we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings or damage a relationship, right? We think, well, I could do that. I could. I mean, it would be really a stretch, but I could do that. I don't want to do that, but I could do that. And if I could do that, maybe I should do that. And you're having this whole internal dialogue with yourself, just with a friend, not even a hijackal. And you are always in that question and always beating yourself up for not saying no and being resentful that you said yes. Anna said no, but hate being on automatic yes. Yes. Being on automatic yes is an exhausting, unproductive, and unhappy place to be. Laura says, I'm learning from you because I want to be liked or loved from me over doing for others. Yes, exactly. We don't say no because we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, and we don't want to lose any friends, right? And we don't like conflict, maybe. And we don't really feel comfortable confronting people. Maybe you think it's impolite. I was raised in Canada. We're well known for being super polite. And so with that comes a reluctance to be impolite in any form. And sometimes it goes so far as to thinking that it's impolite to say no to someone. And how about you're afraid they won't like you if you say no? Because some of us have, and if we're raised by a hijackal, we'll often have deep running rivers of just that feeling that I just can't say no to people. And that people need to like me. And those deep running rivers are really of people pleasing, right? That, okay, if I just stand on my head and spit wooden nickels for a year, then they'll like me. And that if I do things for them I don't really want to do, they'll like me better, or maybe even like me a little. And when we've been raised by hijackals, we don't get much validation. So it's a way of finding validation. Yes, and Bomba Girl says, I'm worried about losing people or support in your life. Exactly. Like we may not have much support, and if the person that we want to say no to is one of the few people who can offer even a little bit of support, we might not want to say no. Or we might feel we can't say no. Kristen says, my difficulty was saying no to my mother, but other people I'm better at. Good. I've realized I can say no and don't have to say yes to everything, but still struggle with my mother. Well, we're going to talk about that for sure. Hi, Sherry. Welcome to the show. And she says, and some have been programmed to always say yes. Of course. If you had a supremely difficult person in your life, one of those relentlessly difficult folks I call hijackals, all they want to hear from you is yes. Right? That's all that's acceptable to them. Yes, I'll do it. Yes, whatever you say. Yes, you're right. Yes, I'm always at fault. That's the way the relationship goes. It's very unhealthy. It's very one-sided. And that's the way it goes. So you have, in fact, as Sherry said, been programmed to always say yes. And maybe you just haven't built that muscle of saying no. Maybe in your home, you had a parent who modeled never saying no, so you think that's the way to go. And today may be a big revelation for that little child within you somewhere that learns to say, you can say no. So one of the sneaky things that we hope about this is that people will kind of pick up our cues. Even if we don't say no, they'll kind of pick them up. Like maybe someone asks you to do something and you have a little bit of a delay before you answer. And sort of that lag time that you're hoping that they'll jump in and say, oh, doesn't that work for you? Usually healthy people might pick up on that cue, but definitely a hijackal will not. And they will think that you don't want to please them, and they'll jump in on that. And, maybe there are other ways that we try to do it without actually saying it. And so a cue might be we go into the, oh, golly, I'll have to look at my calendar. Well, it might be possible. Let me think about it a bit and get back to you. Those kind of things are cues that we hope somebody will pick up on, that we don't want to do what they're asking us to do, or we don't think what they want us to think. And so we need to learn how to become direct in our ability to say no when that's what's required. As I said, I'm from Canada, and I was reading something the other day which kind of set me on this idea of doing the topic tonight. And it said that there's such a thing as the Canadian no. They suggested that the Canadian way is that they'll let you die of old age before they'll refuse you directly. And there's some truth in that, because it goes back to the politeness, then not wanting to disappoint someone, then wanting to go the extra mile, the willingness to go the extra mile. And when you've been accultured that way, it's lovely if everybody's doing it to a degree, but it can be very disempowering when you don't feel that you can say no and you don't know how to say no. Laura said, I'm Canadian too, so you know a little bit about what I'm talking about. My hijackal, planning an exit strategy, but started by not cooking for him anymore. 2 days now. It's stressful to not serve. Yes, it is. I was raised by 2 hijackal parents. And so, of course, I went on to marry a hijackal and then have to figure it out and get a divorce and co-parent and do all those kinds of things you have to do. So I know about that. And then I was in Canada too. So there was the outside pressure not to tell the truth, and the home pressure never to question what was being told to me about who I am and what I ought to do. So if they asked me to do anything, one was a covert hijackal, the other was an overt hijackal. So the overt hijackal would say, "How dare you, young lady?" And the covert hijackal would say, "Oh, I can't deal with that. It makes me feel so unwell. I'm just so disappointed." Right? And so that's very difficult. So I kind of laughed when I heard about the Canadian no. And in a sense, what they were talking about was a passive no. You don't really come out and say it, but you find a way to convey it. Right? That's a big deal. So remember this as we talk about this. You're not refusing the person. You're refusing the request. Now, that's a really good thing to write on your forehead. I'm not refusing the person. I'm refusing the request. Could that help a little bit if you had that in your mind? That you're actually not saying no to the person. You're saying no to their request. I think it is helpful because it will allow you to say that, you're not always going to say no. You're not refusing the relationship. You're not refusing everything in the relationship. What you're saying no to is this request at this time on this day. It isn't generalized to the entire relationship. It's no to this request. And that's important. It's a very important distinction. I hope you see that and you entertain that idea. So you're not saying no to the person, you're saying no to the request. Alan Marfel, hi, says, so if a no or expressing a doubt is met with a question or a rebuttal, is that a hijackal trait? No, not necessarily, unless that's always the way. We're all in flux every day, pretty liquid in the way that we are going through life. Some days we're having good days, some days we're having mediocre days, some days we have a really nasty day. And so we might be refusing. We might have a question. We may rebut. We may say, well, why can't you just do it this time? But if somebody says that all the time and they're always doing an eye roll and they're always, then we have to look to see if they truly are a hijackal or have hijackal traits that are of certain kinds. And one of them would be this high expectation that they always get to be right, they always get to win, they always get what they want. And that's definitely a hijackal trait. And if you've been with a hijackal, you know that they are very, very skilled at manipulating the conversation to make you wrong and to make everything your fault, including the weather and taxes if need be, So Alamorphos says, I'm not refusing the person, I'm refusing the request. I love it. Great. So we get to say that again because I think it's big. I think it's so important. And I also think it's freeing. I think it can really free you up. Now, one of the things that people who don't want to say no do is they try to avert eye contact with the person who's asking. So one big step that you can take is to lift your eyes to the person and say, oh, I would be really happy to help you in another circumstance, but not this one. I can't do it. Sorry. And you don't even have to say sorry. I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes. But look them in the eye. Get to that place where you can look them in the eye and let them know that they're valuable, and maybe not so valuable if they're your hijackal, but still look them in the eye and be able to say, no, I'm sorry, that won't work for me this time. Could you do that? Just simply, no, that won't work for me this time. That means that there could be another time. It could mean it could work another time. It's simply refusing the current request. I used to do a lot of big seminars with hundreds of people, and I would have them stand up and we'd go through this elaborate thing where I would say, now put your hands on your hips and get ready. Now put your mouth like this. And now all you have to do is add an N. Now let's all practice going, no. It's not really that difficult. No. And you don't have to just say it alone, although it's quite fine to just say it alone. You can say, no, that won't work for me just now. You don't have to be sorry. You don't need an explanation. You don't need to give them an excuse or a reason. Are you with me? You really don't have to give them an excuse or a reason or even be sorry. If you are sorry, of course, say that. But the fact that they just ask me for something, all it requires is a yes or no. So Sherry says, hi, Sherry. What if a hijackal parent is grooming their child to always say yes? Oh, they will. Is leaving the answer, or is there another way? Well, I'm guessing, Sherry, and tell me if I'm wrong, that you have a partner who is grooming your child to always say yes. So your question is really, is this something that is worth my thinking about leaving over, or is there another way? Do I have that right? Well, hijackal parents will groom their children to always say yes and to always be wrong, except for the golden child in the family. Now remember, in a hijackal family, you're going to have one golden child and one scapegoat for sure. And if you happen to be like me, I'm an only child, so I got to be both on different days. But they're going to have a golden child that they'll always make excuses for, so that would be different. But it's really important to know that the hijackal parent is not about to take no for an answer when a request is made, because it's not really a request, it's a demand. And when you have a hijackal partner, you know that. Because anything that sounds like, would you like to go to the movies on Friday night? Not a straightforward question, right? It's fraught with all kinds of possibilities and difficulties. And even if you say yes with a hijackal partner, that doesn't mean you're going to the movies on Friday night. You know that, right? So this is a very important question that Sherry's asking, because hijackal parents do groom their children to say yes to their demands, to back up whatever the hijackal parent says. So I just want to stop for a minute, and I'll answer everybody as we go, but I just want to stop and talk for this minute about hijackals and validation. Hijackals validate people, particularly children, to address Sherry's question. Hijackals validate children and other humans for their accomplishments. And they validate their children for their accomplishments only because the hijackal parent thinks it makes them look good. Somehow they're getting the credit for having a successful, accomplished child. But a hijackal parent will not validate a child for how the child feels, or what the child thinks, or what the child needs and wants. They're not interested in that. So if we've had a hijackal parent ourselves, then it's, what can you do for me? That's what the hijackal parent. How can you make me look good? How can you make me a success? How can I vicariously get something from you? And that's a real problem, because then as the child, you learn that what you think and feel and need and want doesn't matter very much. It's what you do that matters. And that can put you sideways when you become an adult. It really, really can. And so it's very important. Someone asked me the other day, how do hijackals gaslight children? And I mentioned it in last week's live stream. You can go back and read that. It was called, or watch it. It was called Sneaky Gaslighting. And how do parents gaslight children? They refuse to accept the child's view of reality. They'll tell the child how the child thinks. They'll tell the child how the child feels. They'll tell the child how the child and what the child needs and wants. And they won't listen to the child at all. Very, very difficult. Very difficult. So let's see what's happened since I was talking. So Sherry said, I was 100% sure to leave until someone asked me, are you sure you can't work it out? Yes, well, Sherry, we need to talk for a moment about who that someone was and what was their vested interest, what was their philosophy, what were their values, and what were they thinking? Because we always have to look at who asked the question. Who is the originator of a question like, are you sure you can't work it out? And how is their life working? And what are they up to? Big, big question. So you might want to fill that in a little bit, because that would help me have a few more things to say about that. Ashley, hello. Ashley says, day one quitting smoking. Congratulations. I know it's tough and awful, but congratulations. Saying no to myself is so difficult. 15-year toxic relationship with cigarettes, learning to love myself and choose me. Yay! Good for you. Play on your own team. Be your own best friend. Be your supporter. Be your cheerleader. And be the star of your team. You want to be healthy. You want to have a wonderful life and a life that is healthy every moment. So good for you. So Sherry said, yes, the scapegoat child sees the problem, but the child who's the golden child doesn't, and he's 18. Well, the golden child has no problems because they're being validated for everything they do. You know, the space that they walk on is golden. So the golden child is completely oblivious and of course wants to keep in favor with the hijackal parent, so will side often with the hijackal parent too in order to keep the peace and to keep all the goodies coming their way. And then the child who is a scapegoat child, they know in their hearts by the time they're teenagers that this isn't fair. It's always felt unfair, but by the time they get some brain development, Remember, our brains grow until we're 25, 30. And so by the time we get some brain development, usually around, somewhere between 8 and 11 in that period, then we're beginning to see that it's not all my fault. And there's some logic to it. And I can see outside myself, and I can see other people, and I can understand causation, and I can understand linear thought. When this happens, then that happens, that makes this happen, and that feels like this. So it takes a while for the brain development to come to that place. And yes, the scapegoat child will see, oh, no, this isn't good. But unfortunately, too many scapegoat children are afraid to step up. They really are, because the very little, the pittance they're getting from a hijackal parent is better than nothing. So eventually they see the difficulties, and then they can start to heal, and they can blossom a bit. So Anna said, that makes so much sense about hijackal parents. Good. And Laura, so bang on. Yay. Kristen says, my hijackal has a hard time saying no. Well, really? We'll say we can or we will, or yes to something, but then no follow through, and not just to me, but others too. He doesn't want to disappoint, but doesn't commit either. Oh, you've got a covert hijackal. That's the one who's, I just can't please everybody, and everybody expects so much out of me, and it's so difficult. Does that sound familiar, Kristen? And then it's like, well, I don't know who to please, and I don't know how to do it, and they get into this place of, they have a false projection of humility, and they have a very enlarged idea of how hard done by they are, and then they are constantly complaining that people will not like them, or people will not give them what they need. They're not interested in what they need. Now, they're manipulating things, but they use that covert way, hiding behind the poor me's. My dad was a covert hijackal, and he was often ill, and I think he really enjoyed it. He certainly seemed to, because every time there was something said in the house that he didn't like, he'd say, I can't have these conversations around me, they make me ill. And so everything was shut down. And it was all about keeping him from feeling ill. Very, very difficult. So, Kristen, would you say that your hijackal, who has a hard time saying no, tends to be a little covert? Well, I'll watch for your answer. And Sherry says, the scapegoat child has panic attacks and suicidal thoughts this year, a rough year. Yes, very, very difficult. I hope you get some support for that child. I hope you can get someone to work with that child who really understands the nature of hijackal behavior and the effect that it has on children. Often I'm seeing kids and all over the place because I work by video conferencing, and I know how important that is. And you know what's cool? The kids really like it that it's digital. They don't have to come into my office. They don't have to get all touchy-feely. We can talk in the way that they love it because it's screen time. So find someone for your child to talk to. You may well have done, but it's important for us all to acknowledge that we need to get help for our children, especially the children who are being scapegoated, or the children who are being really neglected, emotionally neglected by the hijackal parent. And then the hijackal parent demands that all of a sudden the child buck up and show up, and the child is very, very confused, and they think it's their fault, especially if the child is less than 10, because of the brain development. And so the child begins to think that they're bad, that they're worthless, that all of these terrible things are who they are. And that's very difficult, because then you go into puberty and you've got all that running in their head, and then they've got all this hormone stuff going on, and things go sideways quite a bit. Sherry says the golden child was the one who asked. The golden child was the one who asked for what? Okay, I'm lost on that one. Laura says, Sherry, I'm with you and I hear you big time. Okay. Ashley, thank you. I'm using this to weed other toxic relationships out. Good. Good. We sure don't want to be in a whole lot of toxic relationships, and the sooner that we can get out of one, the better. Or if we can't get out of one, then we want to distance ourselves from them, and we want to learn to say no. And that's the topic for tonight. We want to learn to be able to tell our truth. And if our truth is no, we need to start doing that. So I just want to say a couple things before I carry on reading the chat. When it's time to say no, you may not be ready to say like a full out no way, that kind of no. But you do need to be able to come to the middle. And the middle is where you say, I'm uncomfortable with that. No, that wouldn't work for me just now. Where you just come to that place if a hijackal is making demands on you and they're asking for a straight answer, you at least come to the middle where you can say something that is just benign. You're not saying no to them. You're not saying I don't want to do that. You are deeply in that, remembering what we said earlier, that you're saying no to the request, not to the person, and you learn to say it in the quietest, calmest voice possible to know, not this time, that won't work for me. And the person may go off like a Roman candle because they're not getting what they want. They are not in the moment doing what they like to do, which is winning. And so, you risk. But what's important is you empower yourself by being able to say that, no, I don't think so. It won't work for me just now. And you get to that middle ground as opposed to telling them all the reasons, because you never have to give the reasons. But with a hijackal, they're not going to listen to them anyway. They don't want to have a conversation. They don't want to hear any of your thoughts or feelings about something. They only want the answer they want. So it becomes very important for you to empower yourself to be able simply to say something. No, I don't think so. I know that won't work for me right now. That gives a little promise it might work for another time, but in the moment, it won't work. And you just get to say that straight out. And when we really keep in mind that we're saying no to the request, not to the person, then it can get a little bit easier, because you can say that to a hijackal. I'm saying no to the request right at this minute because it doesn't work for me, but I'm not saying no to you as a human being. You may even have to say that out loud, right? You may have to do a little educating in a very quiet, helpful way, not in a I'm going to tell you how it is way, but quiet. But learn to say no without apology. That's important. And hijackals use emotional blackmail to get you to change your mind so you'll make them right and do what they want. And so it's important for us to understand that this emotional blackmail. I won't like you if you don't do what I want. Okay, that's all right with me. That's maybe what you're thinking, but you simply take it in stride. Don't get too worried about it. But if they've worn you down and torn you down and put you down for so long, and then they start getting angry, it's not so easy to just be able to say no to them. But don't listen to their emotional blackmail. Just quietly state your truth. No, that won't work for me just now. Or that's not possible for me. You got to find your inner toddler. When you're 3, you have no trouble saying no. Have you noticed that? Toddlers have no trouble saying no. They're very assertive. And when they're first doing what we call individuation, when they first realize that they're not the same person as their mother, that first individuation, that's when they start to learn and take such joy in saying no. And saying no to their mother, right? Because now I realize I'm not you, and we're separate, and I can say no. And so we want to summon up our inner toddler sometimes and just allow ourselves to say no. Because hijackals revert to being toddlers so frequently when they don't get their way. They have a meltdown, they have a tantrum, all of that kind of thing. And I know you don't want to provoke that. But you also have to know that that's who they are and that's what they're going to do. So for you just to find that little assertive inner toddler that knows how to say, no, not this time, or no, that won't work for me. So you need to summon up your inner toddler and know what you want so that you can say no when it's appropriate. And the second thing, you need to trust your gut and your instincts. I wrote some things down here that I wanted to be sure to tell you, because so many times when you're with a hijackal, but when you're with friends who you really like and maybe you want to please or keep happy, or that you just want to be affable and friendly and appear cooperative, you can have a moment when you just don't want to do something. And that's quite all right to say so. It may be negotiable. It may be something you can put off to another time when it works for you. It may be non-negotiable. I never want to do that. I remember years ago when I was first learning to be assertive after so much hijackal in my life. And I was really working at it. And I started by saying no when someone would ask me to go to a Tupperware party. There seemed to be a Tupperware party every 15 minutes. Somebody was having a Tupperware party, and I thought, I don't like Tupperware parties. Let me practice on this. And so I would say, oh, thanks so much for including me, and no, I don't want to come on Friday. And then I'd just smile. And the people were usually, because it was in Canada, like, what do you mean? They'll say, well, we'll get free gifts and we'll have a good time and there'll be food and everything and your friends will be there. Why don't you want to come? No, I don't like to go to Tupperware parties. And after a while, I started saying things like, Tupperware is supposed to last a lifetime and I have enough of it to last a lifetime. Thanks. Let's do something else together, not Tupperware. But, you got to find your stride and practice where you can. So I started practicing on saying no to Tupperware parties. But in my gut, I knew, I don't want to go to another Tupperware party. I don't want to play games. I don't want to make nice conversation. And I don't want to be asked to buy things that I don't want to buy and be made to feel like I should buy something. So that was a great place to practice. So this is important. Now, there are three more things I want to tell you that are important. So we've got summon up your inner toddler, trust your gut. And then number 3 is don't explain excessively because you don't need to. You don't need a reason to not do what someone else wants you to do. It is simply enough that the answer is no. Now, you might have to work up to that. It might not come very naturally at the beginning, but know that you don't have to do what somebody else wants you to do, and you don't need to explain why, and you don't need to say sorry. Okay? That urge to say yes, that comes from a lack of self-confidence and a lack of self-valuing. And the hijackals are counting on that. They've worn you down. They've tried to get rid of your self-confidence. They've tried to get rid of your self-valuing. And so if you start showing up as a person who can say no, the dynamics change. It's not usually very nice, but if you do it the way that I was mentioning earlier, no emotion, just quietly, no, that won't work for me just now. Or no, I can't do it that way. Or no, I won't be able to do it then. Just quietly own it, walk on. And remember that when you say no, you're saying yes to yourself. Got that? When you're saying no, you're saying yes to yourself. And that's good. That's you saying, I have the right to do this. You have the right to take up space and draw a breath. Therefore, you have the right to be assertive. And my definition of assertiveness is that you have the right to say what you think, feel, need, and want at any time, as long as you don't mention another human by name or pronoun. So you're just speaking about yourself. That's assertiveness. To have the right to say what you think, feel, need, and want, as long as you do not mention another human by name or pronoun. Make sense? So learn to say yes to yourself, and then it will become easier to say no to others after you practice for a while. So I'm happy to answer any questions from this, but I'm going to go back and see what the conversation is. Okay, Ashley said, those who support me and have my best interest at heart can stay, but if they aren't, they need to go. Good criteria. Absolutely. Why would we want people in our lives who don't support us and don't have our best interests at heart? Absolutely. Moving on. Absolutely. Good for you, Ashley. And Kristen answered my question. She said, yep, he's very covert, but then he's quick to have a reason for things and won't take responsibility for himself and his actions, which hijackal does. No hijackal takes responsibility for their actions. They're never accountable, and they're always right. And Kristen said, I know I need to model healthy boundaries. Yes, you do. And first of all, you have to know what your boundaries are. You have to practice them. And then you can model healthy, non-negotiable boundaries. Boundaries are non-negotiable. They're not suggestions. You know, I've done quite a few videos on YouTube about boundaries. So if that's something you need to shore up a little bit, be sure to go and have a look at those videos. And you know, on all the videos that I've done, there's over 350 of them, you can always put comments in there. And I get a little notice that says somebody put a comment. So if you have a comment or a question, I'll go in and answer it. So when you're listening to my other videos, be sure to do that. And again, you know, if you have real questions and you want to be able to interact with me, I do go into the discussion forums in optimizedcircles.com every day. And I answer questions and I chat with people and I engage in the conversation there. So go to optimizedcircles.com. I told you about it at the beginning of the video, but that's the best way to interact with me if you have a question. So Anna said, I used to think my poor mom, so helpless, such a victim. Oh boy. I was a scapegoat. My sister could do nothing wrong. Ah, right. Love this clarity, Anna says. Yeah, it's a real moment, isn't it, when we kind of come up for air and we realize what the patterns are. And that doesn't usually happen for us until we're, usually 28 to 35 is when we actually start seeing all that and its effect on our lives. And so good when we start to see that. Alamarfo said, yes, a covert hijackal. That my ex, he tells me, I'm done trying to please you. Nothing I do is ever good for you. I can't show up in this relationship. And it's a justification for him escaping life. That's the covert and hijackal for sure. Oh, poor me. I can't do anything right. Nothing I try works. Oh, it's just impossible for me to please you. You know, never saying you're so difficult. It's impossible for me to please you. That's the covert, hidden nature. And it's a little more difficult to recognize that it's a hijackal for sure. And Katie, hi, Katie, welcome. Katie said mine was covert like that too. How to learn to express or cope with his anger or his own boundaries being violated, and it took it out on me. Yes, that's what they do. Because nothing ever lands on them, right? There can't be any flies on them. Nothing is ever wrong with them. Now, just a word about them. You know, I don't want you to condone or enable their behaviors. Absolutely not. But let's all have a little compassion for them, because this is the only way they know to survive in the world. We don't have to put up with it, but we do need to know that they were taught this is the way that they needed to be to survive in the world, usually at a young age. And so these are the only tools they have, and they can't imagine stepping out from behind those tools, because they've usually been deeply shamed when they're young. and they are not going to let anybody shame them again. And that's how they build that hijackal crust. And so, yes, I mean, a covert person will have that sneaky anger, and that's difficult. Covert, sneaky anger is sarcasm, right? That's the lowest form of anger. It's just that sarcasm. And then when you say, oh, that hurt, they say, oh, you've got a thin skin. Or you say, oh, that hurt, and they say, oh, I was just kidding. Right? I bet if I asked you all to put up your hand if you've ever heard those things, you would say, yes, I have. Yes, that's what coverts do. Kristen says, ugh, Ale Marful, yep, I'm doing the best I can. I don't want to disappoint you. I'll keep my mouth shut so I don't say the wrong thing. Poor me. All his expressions. Yes, now we're seeing the patterns of covert hijackals. And you almost feel like, oh, I can't say anything. A poor person, they're feeling so badly. What have I done? And that's the deception. That's exactly what they want you to be feeling. So Sherry said, so would it be more damaging to divorce or stay with therapy? Oh, he was the one who asked me if I could just work it out. The golden child. Ah, okay. Well, the thing is that it's a double-edged sword, and every single person's relationship is different. And that's why I like people to come and talk to me personally, so I know the specifics. But when you are calibrating whether to leave a relationship that has children or whether to stay in a relationship, you have to think about the effect on the children. Modeling that behavior day in and day out, having the hijackal model that behavior for the children, very damaging, because usually one of the children will try to please and become like that because they've been deeply shamed by the hijackal parent. And so that's a risk that you take. But on the other hand, if you divorce, and this is why it's very specific to each situation and the ages of the children and all kinds of other factors, if you divorce, then you know that the hijackal is going to have the children to him or herself, and you are not going to be there to hear what's going on or to mediate conversations or to catch things when they go sideways. And so you have to be able to weigh those things out. Like, I'm always here and I'm miserable and it's a bad model, but if they're over there with the other person and the hijackal person all the time on their own, I won't be able to intervene. I won't know what's going on, and then I don't really have the right to be asking my kids. I have to wait for them to tell me. And then there's a whole question of how is your hijackal likely to, if they're likely to, attempt to alienate the children from you. And they're highly likely to want to do that, but some hijackals are much more likely than others. So I can't give you a specific answer, Sherry, whether it's more damaging to divorce or to stay with the therapy. But therapeutically, when I have a client come to me and they say, I think my partner is a hijackal, can you help me? I say, absolutely. The two of you come and start working with me, and I will soon be able to see what's going on. And then I will slowly start working with the problem. And if the person, the hijackal, absolutely shows their true colors, they'll walk out. If you have a hijackal who stays in therapy with you, that's one thing. But if you have to go to therapy in order to stay with the hijackal, then it must be because you have some dynamics with your children, with the finances, with the home, with all kinds of things that need to be specifically looked at that would cause you to go to therapy in order to save your sanity so that you could stay. So, Sherry, I know that that's not so straightforward an answer, but your golden child is not a reliable source of what you ought to do in that relationship. It's good information, but of course they want to stay because children don't want their parents to separate. Children have half of each of your DNA. They don't want it to happen. Now, if you're fighting all the time and one partner is horrible, 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 sometimes the children do want rid of them, particularly if there's sexual or physical abuse. In addition to the verbal and emotional abuse, the children want to be taken out of it. But it's all a bit problematic, as most of you will know, because courts are unreliable. Never confuse the justice system that we wish we had with the legal system we do have, right? And every case is a little bit different. Like I mentioned a while ago, I have clients all over the world. I support them through figuring out their relationships, deciding to go or stay, preparing to leave, and then through the whole court process. Many times I work with their attorneys to help the attorneys know how to confront and deal with the hijackal in court. So many pieces to the puzzle. So Anna says, so sorry, Alamarful, those words hurt when someone says, I am done trying to please you. Well, it's a ploy. They're not done trying to please you. That's just a backwards way of saying, you're not pleasing me. But that's the way a covert hijackal works, and yes, it's hurtful. Laura said, I always get gaslit whenever I say no. Of course you do. Because the hijackal is going to gaslight you. They're going to define your reality for you. That is the definition of gaslighting. When another person tells you what you think, feel, need, want, see, hear, said, and they become the authority on your reality, and they pretend as though they are, and that's gaslighting. So yes, that's what they're going to do, Laura, because they can't be wrong. They simply can't be wrong. It's not possible. Remember that deep shame that they have? No, everybody else has to be wrong. I couldn't possibly be wrong because I couldn't imagine that. It would shatter me to think I was wrong. And that's why sometimes people say to me, well, they say they're sorry. What should I do? Watch their behavior for 4 weeks and see if they're sorry. Words don't matter. Behavior matters. Kristen said, I told my hub I was uncomfortable texting his sister for him and being put in the middle, and it made him mad. He didn't like it, but I won't do it. He still tries. Yay! Good for you, Kristen. You do not want to triangulate. That is a hijackal tactic. They like to make a triangle, put you in the middle. And they'll do that in many ways, and that is a direct example right there. So good for you for saying no. Besides that, when one adult has something to say to another adult, the straightest thing is a straight line between the 2 points. We don't need to triangulate. So good for you for stepping up and saying, no, I'm not going to get in the middle of this. I'm not going to be triangulating. Katie said, I hate it when they ask me to explain my note and then use my responses to try and pick apart my note and break it down into a yes. It irritates me no end. Yeah, and that's the reason they keep doing it. And then he went on and said, mainly because it usually works on me. There you go. They're going to get the answer that they want because they have to win in the moment, in the circumstances. And a win for them can be, this is what I want and I have to have it. And 20 minutes later, they will want the exact opposite and they will have to have it. And when you say, but you wanted this 20 minutes ago, they'll say, you don't listen very well, do you? You never listen. You never understand what I say. And all it becomes your fault again. So bad. Ali Marfel said, you mentioned the hijackal walking out of marriage therapy. I went numb, and when my ex began to see it, he found a marriage counselor for us. I made it 4 sessions. He would throw me under the bus. Yeah, that's the thing, you see. Like, my whole mission is to help people stop tolerating abuse and reclaim their lives and their power. I see this stuff. I am specially trained to see this. I'm specially trained to find it. And I have huge experience and expertise together. So many times you go to a counselor, a therapist who doesn't see this regularly. In fact, maybe they don't see it at all. And the hijackal will take that opportunity to seduce and manipulate them the therapist into believing the hijackal, and then they wound you, both of them. Then two of them are making things your fault. I've had so many clients who have had that experience. So be sure that when you choose a therapist, you go to someone that you have interviewed and that you know will be able to see what's going on. And actually, when you go to forrelationshiphelp.com, my website, forrelationshiphelp.com, and you click on the store, I actually have a 1-hour conversation with experts there on how to choose the right therapist. Because there is an art to doing it. And yes, what I said earlier, people will come to see me, and then when I start to call the hijackal on their part in the difficulties, the hijackal will get furious, they'll yell at me, they'll walk out, they'll try to make me look bad, they'll do all kinds of things. But the thing is, I work in packages of sessions. So the person buys a package of sessions, the hijackal walks out, and the hijackal's partner has the rest of the sessions to use to know how to manage the relationship. So, yes, if you are with a therapist where your hijackal can throw you under the bus regularly and the therapist or counselor doesn't see it, you need to change therapists or leave the therapy. But the problem with that, and you have to be very careful. Remember what I said about giving you specific advice? You have to calibrate whether leaving in the documentation for when you want to actually divorce this person is wise or not. Right? You may feel put upon, but this may be the time for you to become assertive and practice that rather than walking out. It's an important thing. But good for you for making it for 4 sessions. That's a good start. And when I brought up issues, you say he'd feel attacked and would stonewall me after the sessions. Oh, of course. I felt like a hostage in my own home, so I stopped therapy. He then filed for divorce to try and force me to therapy. Yeah, well, that's interesting. Kristen says, thank you. I blocked his sister actually because I wasn't going to relay messages. Most messages were nasty. So Kristen is talking about ending the triangulation and saying no to it. So great. Laura said, I have only experienced hijackals. I wonder how to spot someone who isn't one. Oh, thank you so much for the talk. It's been amazing. Well, you're so welcome. I have a free ebook at hijackals.com, and you spell that hijackals.com, called How to Spot a Hijackal. And I'm saying that in response to what you said, Laura, because all the people that you know will be in there, but you will see what the people who don't have those traits could possibly be like. So it's important. And if you know people who you suspect are in relationships with hijackals, that ebook is free, How to Spot a Hijackal, at hijackals.com. And they can figure it out for themselves instead of you saying, hey, I think you're with a hijackal. Kristen said he doesn't want to talk to his sister, so why do I have to be the one to do it? Right, exactly. It makes no sense. Why should you? And you said no. So yay, that's perfect. Thank you. Alan Marfel said, thank you for the distinction. I needed you because I believe he would have dropped his mask with you. Yes, I have very good hijackal radar. And I've been doing this for a long, long time. So I'm pretty skilled at bringing this stuff out in the gentlest and most opening way to get some conversations, if they're possible. And if a hijackal walks out, we know for sure what's going on. In fact, when I used to have an office and didn't work by video conferencing all the time, a hijackal would walk out and the partner would say, oh, I'll go get them. And I would say, no, just sit here. They'll be back. They can't stand not knowing what's going on in the room. And they would, of course, come back, but then they never came back again. Sherry said, what if the hijackal husband doesn't listen to me when I've tried to tell him about the grandfather has warning signs of grooming for sexual abuse to the children? Well, you're going to have to document all the evidence Every interaction, everything that was said, first of all, always our friend is document everything, just the facts, and anything the children have said, any signs that you've seen. And then if your hijackal husband will not listen to you, then you have to do your best to refuse to allow the grandfather to be around them. So then you just distract them. You get busy. If it's time to go to grandfather's, you all of a sudden remember that you have to take the children to the park or to the dentist or wherever they have to go, and off you go. You do have to do some things like that. Krista says, yes, thank you for the Monday night live chats. You're so welcome. Do invite your friends to come along. You know, the replays are always there, but it's so much better when you can chat in here. Yes, Sherry, you are so welcome for the insights. And Katie, is your term hijackal inspired by Marshall Rosenberg? No, it isn't. I created the term hijackal because I felt too many people were going to Google and putting in what's going on at their house, and Google was spitting back a psychological diagnosis, and that's dangerous. You don't know whether your person's a narcissist or a psychopath or a sociopath or a narcopath or a histrionic. You don't know, and it's not wise to consider it that way. So I wanted a non-clinical term, a non-psychological term that would talk about the patterns, traits, and cycles. So I created and trademarked the term hijackals. How do you document it? Well, somewhere safe where the hijackal will never find it. So put it on a flash drive and keep it somewhere safe, you know, and just keep adding to it. Best to do it digitally because you can store it completely off your computer. You can put it on Dropbox or somewhere where they don't have access. They don't have your codes. So many things to tell you tonight, but remember, when you need to say yes to yourself, then that's when you're going to say no to somebody else. And remember, that's what you're really doing. And remember, you're saying no to a request, not to a person. Now, I have 2 podcasts every week. Emotional Savvy, the Relationship Help Show, and Save Your Sanity, Help for Toxic Relationships. Anywhere that you like to get your podcasts, you can find them. And if you want to go to my website, forrelationshiphelp.com, just click on the podcast link, and they're all there for you with all of the episodes and an opportunity to subscribe so you won't miss any of them. Oh, yes, he called them jackals and giraffes. That was a little bit different, but I understand why you would think that might have come from there, and no, it didn't. So, again, go to the podcasts, Emotional Savvy or Save Your Sanity. There's so many topics covered there, and I hope you'll join me next week and bring your friends. And I look forward to your questions, and I look forward to you telling me next week how you practice saying no. Take good care.